The economic opportunities mining presents are enormous. However, the Trump administration has thrown a wrench into the development of North American critical minerals. The demand for critical minerals in the United States, however, is not going to change, says Michael Goring of the Mining Association of British Columbia. The U.S. has two choices of supply, China and Canada. The U.S. needs our critical minerals. BC currently has 17 mineral projects awaiting approval, 4 of which are on Premier Eby's list of natural resources projects. There's another 5 precious metal or gold projects under development. Goring says these projects represent a generational opportunity for British Columbia's economy. Hello, I'm Stuart McNish, and you're listening to Conversations Live. Conversations Live is a long-form public affairs dialogue series addressing the big issues of our time. For each episode, we bring together subject matter experts for a deep conversation designed to provide you with information that helps you make more informed decisions. I hope you enjoy it. Mining in BC and what it offers to the province and Canada amounts to an enormous amount of opportunities. Gold, silver, nickel, copper, and moly to be sure, and then there is the province's unique abundance of critical minerals. Critical minerals electrified economies need to build the instruments that power our lives. Everything from cell phones to automobiles and night vision glasses, to name but a few. Critical minerals the world wants, and in particular, the United States needs. Critical minerals the government of China has either stopped or curtailed selling to the U.S. Our panel tonight digs deep into the reality, the challenges, and what we can do with the opportunities that lie ahead. Our panelists are, joining us virtually, are Naylene Morin. She's the Vice President, Environment and Regulatory Affairs at Skeena Gold. Kayvon Hirji, Director, External Relations and Communications for Canada at Newmont. Martin Tureen, President and CEO of FPX Nickel Corp. Michael Goring, President and CEO of the Mining Association of British Columbia. Stuart McDonald, President, Taseko Mines. And Kim Lawrence of Ideon Technologies. Welcome to Conversations Live. Tonight, we come to you from Kemkemale, the land of many maples. These are the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations, whose people have lived on and continue to call these lands home. Osium. Conversations Live is a long-form public affairs dialogue series that seeks to advance our understanding of the big issues of our times. Our goal is to share ideas and insights that help each of us gain a greater understanding of our communities, our province, and our country. We also endeavor to raise awareness of not-for-profit organizations that make a difference in our communities. Tonight, I'd like to draw your attention to the Pacific Salmon Foundation, which asks you to think like a fish. From stream to sea, Pacific salmon face complex and compounding challenges along their elaborate migration, a migration that is one of the greatest migrations on Earth. We just don't get to see it because it's underwater. The Pacific Salmon Foundation works to support salmon, offering innovative solutions to foster a resilient future for this remarkable species and provide leadership on salmon issues. If you're in a position to support PSF, I encourage you to reach out to them and ask how you can help. There are also many organizations that help us host Conversations Live. We are only able to bring these events to you in person and live online thanks to organizations that support programming for engaged citizens. You will see the logos and names of these organizations scroll across the bottom of the screen throughout the evening. I can't thank them enough, and to that end, I'm going to take a moment to tell you who they all are, because I really appreciate them. Our hosting sponsors are Macmillan LLP, RBC, and KPMG. Our annual sponsors are Digital, BD Developments, Polygon, Stem Cell Technologies, Helijet, Rennie & Co., Landlord BC, the Pacific Salmon Foundation, TC Energy, Fortis BC, TELUS, and Marquee Wines, which are contributing gift certificates and corkscrews to each one of our panelists. That's for you to take home afterwards as a thank you. And our supporters are BCIT, Falkirk Consulting, the Goodman Report, and OPI. We work in association with Mario Canseco of Research Co., and our media partner is the Vancouver Sun, which is live streaming our event right now. And our live streaming services are provided by Oh Boy Productions. And I say, without their generous support, this program would not be possible. One last little bit of business before we get started. For anybody wishing to submit a question, be it in our in-person audience or online, please go to slido.com, enter the code CONVERSATIONSLIVE, and send in your question. I'll receive your questions and share them with the panelists where I can. Now, that said, I may not deliver your question verbatim, but I will be motivated by your thoughts and ideas, and they'll help to shape my questions this evening. Our topic tonight is mining and the potential it offers to our economy in this era of uncertainty. Mining is one of those sectors we can look to for certainty, or can we? BC currently has 17 critical mineral projects awaiting approval, 4 of which are on Premier Eby's list of natural resources projects. There's another 5 precious metal or gold projects under development. Michael Goring, the CEO of the Mining Association of British Columbia, says these projects represent a generational opportunity for British Columbia's economy. Now, here is Mario Canseco of Research Co., whom we asked to conduct a poll about how we're thinking about mining these days, its impact on the environment, and the benefits to the economy. Arav, can you please roll Mario's video?
As a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, global prices for a range of metals and minerals have significantly increased. When Canadians and British Columbians think about this situation, more than 7 in 10 think Canada should authorize more domestic mining projects. Only 10% of Canadians and BC residents believe this is not the right time to expand mining. Environmental stewardship has always been a concern for the mining industry, especially in British Columbia after the 2014 Mount Polley disaster. A decade later, more than 3 in 5 Canadians and British Columbians express complete confidence or moderate confidence in Canada's mining industry to operate following high environmental standards. Fewer than 1 in 10 residents of Canada and BC express no confidence at all on this matter. Canada has designated 31 minerals as critical. These minerals include rare earth elements, sometimes referred to as rare earth metals, as well as copper and nickel, among others. There is an extraordinary level of awareness of how and where these metals intersect with our daily lives, as more than 7 in 10 Canadians and more than 4 in 5 BC residents currently know that vehicles, smartphones, and rechargeable batteries require rare earth metals. British Columbians are more familiar with the presence of rare earth metals in other products than Canadians. While fewer than 2/3 of Canadians know that these metals are used in radar and sonar systems and catalytic converters, more than 7 in 10 BC residents are aware of these facts. Canadians and British Columbians overwhelmingly agree on the benefits that mining projects will bring, both in jobs and the unique positioning of the country in the world. Also, more than 4 in 5 British Columbians and more than 3 in 4 Canadians think investing in critical minerals will be good for Canada because it would shield the country from global instability and supply chain disruptions. About 3 in 4 Canadians and British Columbians think mining will be required for 2 long-term goals: ensuring the move to green technologies and enabling Canada to successfully transition into a low-carbon economy. At this stage, awareness of the role that mining projects can play in achieving reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous peoples is significantly lower, but still in majority territory. For Conversations Live, I'm Mario Canseco from Research Co.
Thank you, Mario. So, Michael, I want to go to you and ask you to paint a picture for us about the state of mine development, not mining overall, but mine development in British Columbia right now. But there's already a question that's come in that I'm going to add to my opening remarks to you. And it says, I keep hearing about generational opportunity, but who benefits? Is it the shareholder? Is it the executives? Or is it the province as a whole? It's a double-barreled question for you.
Thank you for that double-barreled question, Stu. Great to be here on Conversations Live with my panelists. Look, we are at a time of global instability and volatility. Everybody feels it. You all feel it. I feel it. So the state of mining today and mining development is fortunately one of opportunity. We have the critical minerals and metals and steel-making coal that the world needs here in British Columbia and across Canada. So, and I think the development of those projects can not only help us weather the storm that we face, they can help us secure our economic future. So to that point, the Mining Association just last week published an economic impact study. And we looked at 27 proposed critical mineral, precious metal, and steel-making coal projects that are on the books in BC and are considered to be mature development projects. So we had 18 critical mineral projects, 6 precious metal, that's gold and silver, and 3 steel-making coal projects. And we asked, what are the economic impacts if these projects go ahead into construction and operation? And the results are quite staggering. To develop those projects alone, the investment required approaches $42 billion over on average, the 3-year construction and development period for those mines. Over 730,000 person years of employment. And what does that really mean? What it means is the construction of those mines would deliver $26 billion in economic value to BC workers, which is huge. And altogether, and $12 billion in new taxation for the government services that we all depend on. And what would the overall economic activity be associated with the construction and development of those 27 mines? Almost $90 billion. So it's significant, and it comes at a time when British Columbians, where we need to really focus on securing our economic future and our long-term prosperity.
So, let me ask each of you on the panel, like you're in this sector, when you look at where we're at and the speed at which we're helping a new mine development come to fruition, what's your take on what's holding us up? And Nailene, I appreciate you joining us from Prince George right at the moment. You've driven from Skeena all the way to Prince George to get here in time, and then you got another speech to go give. But when you take a look at where we're at right now, and especially give us a sense of where you're at with Skeena Resources, because you're pretty much set to go, except.
Yes. As we've been known to say, we've got money in our pocket, shovels in the dirt. We just need permits in hand. We've recently submitted both our revised environmental assessment application as well as our major mines permit applications, and we're moving forward in the environmental assessment and the authorizations process. As many on the panel probably can relate to, there are a number of other factors or processes to consider as well, and that is the participation of Indigenous governments and First Nations communities. Ours in particular, quite interesting, is, we're working through what is the first Section 7 or consent agreement with the Tahltan central government. And that in itself has brought some very interesting and new insights into the role and responsibility of First Nations governments in making decisions about projects on their own lands.
What are some of those interesting elements that you mentioned?
There are a number of specific tools, Stuart, that the Tahltan central government are bringing to the table. One is their sustainability principles and risk assessment criteria. Now, both of these are grounded in Tahltan law, as well as Tahltan values and interests, right? So they're asking the right questions in a much more holistic manner to understand if a project gets developed, how does it affect Tahltan way of life? How does it affect future generations, right? So their approach is very specific to getting to the heart of the matter that's important to Tahltan.
Martin, from your perspective, give us your take on where we are in First Nations relations, the tremendous load that has been put on them, and how you envision that we can start to move forward in a way that works for everybody.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stuart. So, and thanks for the invitation. So, FPX is focused on the development of a large nickel project in central BC. And of course, we recognize, as I think all members of industry recognize, that we're working in the backyards of peoples who have inhabited these lands for millennia. And so, in the context of the United Nations Declaration and the passing of DRIPA here in BC, project proponents or companies need to take very seriously the need to commit to true partnership with First Nations in the areas where they work. And that is, I think, shown through both a commitment to kind of collaborative decision-making on key project design criteria and ensuring that nations have the capacity to engage in those discussions, and also towards real economic partnership, up to and including potential equity participation by nations as co-owners in these mine projects. And certainly we as a company are committed to those principles. Beyond that, there's an obvious dimension of government-to-government relationship as well. Province and Canada are focused on reconciliation with First Nations. That is a process that necessarily is taking time and will continue to take a lot of time. And what we've found in our case is our project has been prioritized by the province in its inclusion in a new initiative called the Critical Minerals Office. That's designed to increase the readiness of the company and of government for us to enter the environmental assessment process later this year. But what goes along with that, and where we're seeing government take strong action, is informing tables with impacted nations, nations that are impacted by our project, to ensure there's that G2G dialogue, including taking advantage of the flexibility that exists within the Environmental Assessment Act here provincially to co-design with nations what that process will look like in regards to our project.
Kayvon, from your perspective, building off of what both Naileen and Martin have said, where do we go? What's our next step?
Yeah, I think critical minerals really does present a generational opportunity for the province, as Michael mentioned. We find BC is a bit of it's a Goldilocks zone and a Goldilocks moment, I like to say, because there's a surge in demand for critical minerals. Somebody recently asked me, what do you do? I said, I work in mining. They said, oh, we still do that. And I said, look around. Everything around us was either farmed, harvested, or mined for. It didn't come from anywhere else, and that demand is growing immensely. Just as an example, if a ChatGPT search query uses 10 times as much power as one Google search query. So that power demand is growing instrumentally. And for Newmont, this is really what attracted us to British Columbia, and in particular Northwest British Columbia, which is home to about 75% of Canada's known copper resources. And these are copper gold porphyry deposits. And the gold really actually helps make it economical to mine these copper deposits. But as I said, we are a Goldilocks zone and a Goldilocks moment because we have the geology, we have infrastructure, clean hydroelectric power that supplies a lot of this province, which allows us to close the loop on electrification and the mining of critical minerals. And then we also have access to tidal water and to ports to actually export our resources to diversified Asian markets. But we need to expand that infrastructure because it is almost 2 to 2.5 times more expensive to construct a rural and remote mine. It's about 70% more expensive to operate it, and that is due to the infrastructure deficit. So I think a couple things stand in our way as hurdles. One is infrastructure. One is resources for First Nations to actually meaningfully engage in projects. We need to support nations in actually building up their own resources to engage with those projects and those assessment processes. And really, permitting often comes up as something we talk a lot about. That is directly tied to how we resource nations. It's also incumbent on us as industry to hold the bar high because we will be judged by our lowest common denominator. And if one of our peers does not manage environmental risk properly, that affects all of us. So it's really incumbent on us as industry to hold each other accountable and make sure that we're instilling confidence in regulators and in communities so we can get through those regulatory processes and get on with building mines.
Stuart, you're operating mines in British Columbia right now. I mean, your Gibraltar Mines has been a significant contributor for the last couple of decades, but you're in the process of now developing your, your Yellowhead Copper project. Yeah. Being steeped in having the experience here and the credibility to operate a mine, is that helping you move forward with getting the permits that you need for the Yellowhead Copper project? And if not, what would you like to see change?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I guess time will tell. We're in the very, very early stages, or right at the starting gate, I guess, of our permitting process for our Yellowhead project. And, I think going back to the comment, the discussion on the importance of First Nations, we've spent the last 3 or 4 years essentially focused on building that foundation of a strong First Nations relationship, and specifically the Simp First Nation. We're building a partnership there. That, I think, is the key to being successful in permitting mines in this province, and that's certainly where we've invested our time. So going forward, yeah, we've got work to do. We know there is talk about, and it was nice to see the survey results. At the outset there, I think there's broad recognition in Canada about the importance of critical minerals and about the importance of bringing mines on. And, I think that is well understood, and nice to see in our last election that's the one thing that the Conservatives and the Liberals agreed on. I think it's unanimous, but I think when you get to the question of how do we go faster, that's a lot more, that's a lot tougher conversation. And, we have rules, we have laws in place in BC, and we have regulators that are following those laws, trying to do the best they can. But really, I think what we need is those comments that we get from the politicians about, okay, we're going to expedite permitting. That needs to be translated into actual changes, so that the government, the regulators can do the work and actually execute the wishes that we see from the general public and the politicians. So we've got work to do on that, but we're hopeful. We're hopeful specifically on our Yellowhead project that going to pump our own project too much, but we're hopeful that our well, you got five or six miners here, so you're going to expect a little bit of promotion, but we believe our project is well positioned to with that part, as I mentioned, that First Nations partnership. The work, we believe we're a strong proponent. We've been operating mine here in the province for 20 years. We've got the financial capacity and the management capacity to build and operate the mine. So yeah, we're hopeful that we'll be we'll be able to be a model for a successful permitting process and a successful First Nations partnership. So yeah.
If we're able to move forward on mass, Kim, what role will technology play in our ability to actually realize and confirm what are the ore bodies that we believe are there? And give us a little bit of background about Ideon, because you're a unique British Columbia technology that is connected to mining, but you also then become an exporter as well with that technology.
Absolutely. For context, we are a spin-out of Triumph, the particle physics lab at UBC. Proudly born in BC, proudly grown in BC. Sometimes I'm asked, why are you still in BC? Which I find a little offensive because I don't think we'll ever leave. But we use the energy from supernova explosions in outer space to image beneath the Earth's surface.
Are those cosmic rays?
Those are cosmic rays.
All right.
And we use a very specific subatomic particle called a muon that helps us measure density in the subsurface. And so I hear, first of all, I'm not a miner, love miners. You're all welcome to come for a visit. We're based out in Richmond. We do hardware manufacturing, we do software development, and we have geoscience interpretation expertise. And so we hire a lot of folks coming out of our local post-secondary institutions as well. And I think what I'm hearing a lot of pain around the permitting process. We do hear that a lot. I would say once the permitting process is resolved, one of the next biggest issue is subsurface uncertainty. What the heck is beneath our feet? And sometimes we like to say, you know, it seems easier sometimes to go to space and figure out what's on another planet than it is to understand what's right beneath our feet. And so our technology allows you to get a high volume, high resolution, high velocity model of what's beneath the surface of the Earth. And what that does, and how I think it can accelerate projects, is that we're able to effectively reduce the amount of drilling required by up to 90% to get a really good understanding of what's on a particular site.
90%?
90%. Some of the customers we work with, including Vale in Ontario, have been able to say that they move past the discovery process. They don't drill for discovery, they drill to validate. So we're able to give them pretty precise targets so that they can precision drill for validation and skip years and seasons of drilling and millions of dollars in order to get to an outcome. So I think we have an opportunity there to really compress the time frame.
This is made in BC technology.
Absolutely.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I know, it's spectacular. I love the story.
I want to play a clip right now from when we had Premier Eby in back in September. Well, the election was on, and we talked about the permitting process. Here's what he had to say, and then let's take a look at how that is playing out right at the moment, because I know that he is focused on this, but this is him last September. RF, can you play that clip from Premier Eby? This morning, and for the last 3 mornings, I've been at the Resource Breakfast Series. Your Minister, Nathan Cullen, was there this morning. And in mining, forestry, and other resources, energy development, and so on, as one of the speakers who's in the room here this afternoon, Justin Himmelred, said, you know, we have money, we have shovels, but we need permits. And throughout the whole resource sector, the issue of being permitted is slowing everything down. And if we want to really help drive the economy, the resource sector is still vitally important to British Columbia. The minister admitted it's challenging. And he even said that you gave him a mandate to go and figure out how to cut that time. How do we do that? Because he admitted that it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not easy, but it's critical. So we've brought down permitting times by 40% in the mining sector. We've got a lot more to do. It still takes too long. But we did that with a brute force approach initially, additional staff. We've seen a huge increase in applications, people interested in investing and building in British Columbia. It's great news. Puts demands on staff, slows things down sometimes, especially when you're hiring new people. And so the brute force approach was the first, and now it's about streamlining and expediting processes through what we're taking is a project, a whole project view, as opposed to a permit view. The permit view is you've applied for this permit, I've got it on my desk, I'm the decider on your permit, and I don't look at anything else related to the project. The project view is you are the person bringing the project to the province. We're going to work with you on the entirety of the project and see it as an integrated whole and work with you through the permitting process to accelerate your process. We've got more work to do on that. Another piece of this is the Indigenous partnership and work on this. A lot of nations are getting big piles of requests for comment on a whole variety of permits, and their only concern is water. What is this going to mean for water in our community? how do I make sense of 200 pages of permit applications that are showing up on my desk? Tell me what this means for water. And so with nations, we're working with them to say, what's the priority? What are you worried about? And address that issue so that all the other permits that flow, they know the commitments have been made about water, and that's been addressed, and they can be supportive of the project. So there are a number of different avenues. I'm proud of the work we've done on permitting.
This morning, Naileen, and then Michael, I want to come to you. Are we making progress? Is the Premier right? Is he putting the right amount of energy and resources into being able to move things forward? Because, you saw in that clip, and you quoted earlier, last fall, we were having this discussion. We're still having this discussion today. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Thank you, Stuart. We are making progress, but we are still in a place where we are trying to figure out how we collaboratively work together in an efficient manner. So let me take a step back and explain that. We understand and are on this reconciliation process where nations, First Nations governments, are participating in permitting processes. But the permitting processes we are still participating in are driven by both the federal and the provincial governments. So it doesn't necessarily reflect the decision-making or the tools that I had referenced earlier today from First Nations. We haven't created the space for that, right? So in our efforts to be able to be inclusive, we're actually layering on additional complexities onto the proponent to ensure that everyone has a voice at the table, and not considering the redundancies or the duplications in these processes. So, for instance, if a First Nations government brings a technical team to the table with specific subject matter experts, a lot of these subject matter experts may be the same or similar to subject matter experts that are being brought to the table by BC. Why can't we, earlier on in the planning process, develop a technical advisory committee that takes that into account, so we are reducing the redundancies? So then proponents, such as myself and Skeena Gold and Silver, when we go through the environmental assessment process, we don't have to address 2,514 comments. Maybe it's a lot less, and maybe they're thoughtfully put together with support from different agencies and First Nations, as opposed to receiving multiple comments that are, in some instances exactly the same. So I think putting more resources to the problem of looking for permitting efficiency, at this point, I think it's a Band-Aid solution. I think we need to dig into ultimately, what are we looking for? How are we permitting a project? Who's involved? And how do we get there?
Good question. Michael, your thoughts on how we do get there?
That is a good question. Allow me, Stu, to give you my perspective on Premier Eby's statement first, and that is progress is being made, but it's painfully slow. Look, the willingness to make change and to expedite the major mine permitting process is there. It's there. You've got recently you had the appointment of a standalone Ministry of Mining and Critical Minerals. You've got a very strong mandate letter from the Premier to his minister stating, thou shalt speed mine permitting, and thou shalt be competitive with other competing jurisdictions. It's very strong. And there's other changes that have been taking place inside. What we need is we need urgency, and we need boldness, and we need action, right? There's a lot of talk, and there's been a lot of talk with the government of Canada as well. But now we need action, right? British Columbians want action. I think the polling results from Main Street say that. So it's time for us to roll up our sleeves and get to work and get this done, right?
I know Kayvon wants to jump in. I sense that Stuart and Martin do too, but Kayvon?
Yeah, thanks. It's a popular question for sure. You know, I think there's a lot of folks on this panel who work for companies or run companies that have advanced projects or operators. But it's important to think about the full continuum of mining as well. And starting with exploration and prospectors that actually create the feedstock of projects that then turn into mining. And making sure that those single asset companies or that are perhaps more in the earlier phases of that mining continuum are also treated with the same expedience or priority as the major projects. Because if we don't have a thriving exploration and prospecting industry, we don't have mines to build. So it's a really just important point to keep in mind is that there's a continuum to mining, and we have to make sure that it's healthy at every step of the way.
Martin.
Maybe I'll touch on where we as a company see that the province is making really, really great strides. And this is an idea I think that really Michael and the team at MABC can take some credit for. This idea that the province identifies projects that have reached a certain degree of maturity, that have indicated that they're thinking about entering into the regulatory process. And that was really culminated in the formation of the Critical Minerals Office, which is an initiative of the Mines Ministry last year as part of the province's overall critical mineral strategy. So we're very fortunate and grateful that we have been admitted to that office. Our project has been admitted as the first and to date still only project in that. So what is that initiative all about? It's about increasing the readiness of all of the players who will be involved in the environmental assessment of the project, but in ensuring that those conversations are happening before we press the button and actually formally enter the process. So that means ensuring that we as a company, as the proponent, are fully ready, that we have an appropriate data set, and that we understand the requirements of the process. It means the province and its the varying ministries and agencies that are involved in permitting, whether it's mines, the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Indigenous Reconciliation, Water, Lands and Resource Stewardship, Forestry, etc. All of these agencies touch on these projects. And through this Critical Minerals Office initiative, representatives of each of those agencies are getting up to speed on our project, and we're identifying and addressing issues prior to entering the process. The final piece, and in my view, the most important piece, is it serves as a catalyst for both the proponent and government to engage nations, to ensure the nations are able to build up their capacity so that nations, government, and the proponent, we're all sort of training for the race, so to speak. And so that by the time that we formally enter the process, everyone is ready for that process to begin. And we've all defined what that process what it will look like more specifically. And that, I think, can lead to the kind of the streamlining and the more efficient outcomes that the Premier is talking about.
Stuart.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on one of the points that Martin made there, that, and it goes to, how can we get something happening? How can we take action and address what we're trying to achieve here, build more mines? I think one of the reasons things take a long time to enact or to change laws or change regulations is often government feels to me is trying to create a new magic law or regulation that addresses every project in the whole province, addresses that every First Nation is going to be happy with, that every mining proponent is going to be happy with. I just feel that we're often trying to boil the ocean here, and really what I think should be done is, and I think a faster, more efficient approach is for priority projects to be identified and for government to zero in on what are the good projects, and let's put our efforts into that and get individual things happening, because as we've seen, any one of these projects can have a very meaningful impact. So I think the list that was published recently, the 18 priority projects, and I think 4 of them were mines. mining projects. I think that's great. That's a good start. But in reality, I think those 4 projects, the mining projects that were selected, were all pretty advanced things, and were probably happening anyway. Maybe they're happening a little bit faster now, but they weren't. And 3 of them are existing mines. 3 of them. So we're it's great. We're extending new mines. We're saving jobs. That's great. But we're not creating new economic activity, in my view, with that. So, I think we need to be a little bit bolder, to use Michael's word. Government needs to be a little bit braver, and step out on a limb a little bit politically, and really pick some new projects and get things moving, and get new greenfield mines built. So, that's my view.
So, Kim, I want to go a little bit to what Kayvon was talking about, really making sure that we're not forgetting the junior mining sector, the prospector sector. What role can technology, especially your kind of technology, help to accelerate those developments and bring even more projects into the position where they could start to attract the funding that's needed and move to later stages of development?
Yeah, and also I just want to say yes on the bold, yes on the ambitious, yes on the velocity, all of the things. We live that as startup every day, and it feels sometimes like our province is complacent. If you look around us, you look across the border, you see how fast things are moving. We're doing more innovation outside Canada than we are inside. We're working with the biggest companies in Australia, we're working with companies in Ontario, we're working with companies in Indonesia, but we're not doing it at home. And there's a reason why, and part of that is, I think, a reluctance to take a chance on something. And when you talk about prospectors, sort of really early stage, they're going to market for funding to fund one drill hole in some cases. And when we come to them and we say, we could help you extensively once you have one drill hole, they're like, well, do I either do that or do I do one drill hole? So the decisions that they're making are pretty substantial. I would love to see a scenario where we're banding together to support prospectors in sort of early stage, where perhaps there is an initiative where we bring all of the BC mining tech to bear on the challenges that they face, and that there's some kind of incentive to adopt new technology that will ultimately help them transition to a newer way of doing what they're doing now.
So let's say I wave a magic wand and go, okay, you all got your projects now. Do we have the resources, the human resources, to be able to move forward? Michael.
Yes, we do. The important thing to note, you look surprised, Stu, is that those projects, so they're not going to happen all at once. So
No.
they're phased, right? And there is a prioritization that takes place, right? Projects are all ready at a different time. Nations are ready. So we can move forward, 4, 5, 6 projects being developed at the same time, no problem. That said, we do need to focus on human resources. We do need to look to younger generations who will fill the vacancies from retirees, et cetera, as we move forward. That's very important. Skills and trades training is very important in our sector. It is an issue, and we're working on it.
So we take a look at programs at UBC, BCIT, and others, but they rely on people looking at the future, their own future in mining. And right now, what's your message to potential students in the mining sector, geology, and so on, about what the potential for their careers would be? Martin, I'll start with you.
Well, I would make a sales pitch around mining to say that there's not another industry that I can think of anywhere in the country that can achieve 4 things at once, which is 1, develop our economy, add jobs, add economic activity to the province's bottom line. Number 2, advance genuine, meaningful reconciliation with First Nations. Mining companies are on the front lines of that work. 3, assist with a transition to a low carbon economy, basically help save the planet. And 4, increase our geostrategic importance and standing in the world and our alliance with allies. I really can't think of another industry that meets all those goals.
Naileen, there's a question that's come in here that sort of goes, okay, you're talking about environmental advances by mining. Isn't that a contradiction? What role does mining play in being able to ensure that we actually are protecting the environment as we move forward? What are the safeguards that you have in place?
I think mining's making tremendous strides in improving their overall environmental performance, more specifically environmental stewardship at some sites. When you look at the work that we are doing through Skeena and Eskay Creek, through our relationship with the Tahltan Nation, we are fully embracing the Tahltan sustainability principles to improve our overall water management design, to implement wildlife management programs that support the local Tahltan environmental guardians work. We are staffing up our environmental team at site with Tahltan members who bring that environmental stewardship upbringing and understanding to the team, right? Ultimately, when you look at, the provincial environmental standards here in the province of BC, they're some of the most rigorous in the world, right? And we as companies strive to either meet or exceed them. And we're doing exactly that. So I think there's all kinds of opportunity here to move forward. And I'm only scratching the surface, right? When you look at where we are as well with clean energy and the opportunities in the north to tie in to the electrical grid, it starts to get us away from dependencies on diesel generation power as well. So all kinds of opportunities. It's an exciting time to be here.
So are we really good stewards of the land in mining in British Columbia? And I'm going to ask that of all of you because I don't think we're out celebrating the high standards that we have in British Columbia. And really, we're at a time of I'm a proud Canadian, but are we advertising well enough or sending out that message that we're good at this? Stuart, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know if we are telling our story loudly enough or clearly enough, but it is a good story. I think we have a good industry. We take our Gibraltar mine as an example. We did. The mines, we've been operating it for 20 years without any significant environmental issues. It was operating under previous ownership for about 30 years before we inherited it. So this is a mine that was built over 50 years ago, and it's running fine. And we've got it in great shape, and all of our closure liabilities are bonded. We're going to run for another 20 years, and then we're going to reclaim the land, and it'll be it'll be back to normal. So there's a lot of misperceptions about mining. I think we can do a better job. And then I think weighing that against the economic benefits that our industry provides. Like our mine does $600 million of revenue last year, and all of that. I'm changing topics a little bit, but all of that goes to employees, our suppliers, our workforce, our contractors, all of the businesses and the economic activity that we support in the Cariboo region. And you weigh that against the environmental impacts. It's I think it's a very good equation. So, yeah.
Martin?
Yeah, no, I would agree with what Stuart said. I think there are clear examples in the province of wildlife management plans. For example, I have colleagues who worked on the development of Blackwater, for example, and caribou was a major issue there. And really, the investments involved in building a large mine project like Blackwater, which is now in commercial production, some of that capital was used to create and sterilize from mineral exploration habitat for caribou that arguably makes that region of the province or that area where the mine is located more conducive to caribou habitat now than it otherwise would have been in the absence of a mine. That's just one example of the types of initiatives that mine projects around the province can unlock to not just be a net negative to the local environment, but actually to focus on key species of interest to local communities to see what can be done to actually improve habitat.
We have a lot to be proud of about our environmental record. So moving forward, let's say we are successful and we start to see the developments, permits coming through, you start to move forward. Then there comes the question of processing. I've got one last clip that I'm going to play for you here. This is an interview that I did with David Cohen, who was the outgoing U.S. ambassador to Canada, talking about critical minerals and what do we do with them once they're out of the ground. Arav, can you please play that clip?
Dealing with critical minerals is about a lot more than getting them out of the ground. You also have to build refining capacity, processing capacity, and manufacturing capacity. My example of this is, let's take lithium. Even if magically we could figure out a way to accelerate mining regulation and mining permitting, if we don't at the same time build the processing, refining, and manufacturing capacity, we'll produce that lithium, and the only thing we'll be able to do with it is to sell it to Chinese companies, which will process it, refine it, and manufacture it, and we're still going to have Chinese lithium.
Does he have a point? Okay, Martin, you want to jump in, and then we'll come back to you, Michael.
Yes and no. Of course, the Chinese are the dominant player in processing and refining of critical minerals that are needed in the EV battery supply chain. We do have allies, though, in places like Japan and Korea that are also very adept at that. But I think the broader point that there's a huge opportunity here for continued value add beyond just mining of raw materials in Canada, but to think about the entire supply chain that would connect, the minerals in the ground right through to vehicles that are also produced in this country. There's a huge opportunity there.
Michael.
Yeah, Martin makes a very good point. There is a huge opportunity. There are a few critical minerals and rare earths where China has a stranglehold on. What a decision needs to be made in Canada and British Columbia, is this something that we're going to look at, right? It's something that will take significant investment. It's industrial policy, really, private and public funding. The existing supply chains, say, for copper refining are very deep. Billions of dollars have been spent on plant in South Korea, Japan, China. It's economic to send your copper overseas. So you need a lot of funding, you need some big decisions, and you need to find a good place to do it. As a nation, yet we've to make that decision whether we should pursue that.
It's a big project, though. Kayvon, I know you want to jump in.
Yeah, as we think about the value chain and keeping some of that value chain within Canada, I think where some foreign countries perform quite well in this regard is they see it purely as production. They actually recognize that there might not be a strong business case in the microeconomics of a refinery or smelter, but the macroeconomics make a ton of sense. And we need to widen our aperture beyond the refinery or smelter itself to understand that value out of keeping it in Canada. We talk a lot about critical minerals as well. We are the world's leading gold mining company, and gold remains the third largest export for Canada at about $14 billion. And gold, a lot of that value add remains in Canada as it goes to the Canadian Mint. And it just so happens the U.S. buys about 40% of their gold from the Canadian Mint, some estimations. So tremendous industry in Canada. We talk a lot about critical minerals, but we should talk about mining as a whole, because what's good for mining as a whole will be actually good for our critical minerals development.
It's also good for your industry as well, isn't it, Kim? If there is a bolder embrace of where we're going with mining, it helps to foster the kind of technological innovation that will then further accelerate.
Absolutely it does. And if you think about technology, like the technology we bring to market, it's not just about the front end of the process, it's about the entire mining value chain. And what happens at the beginning has a ripple effect all the way through. I would say right now, and we're working with the second biggest copper mine in the US to help them with density reconciliation, because they know that they're about 10% off, which has massive implications on haulage, has massive implications on their production volume, and then what they're able to bring to market, which then impacts their success as a company. So it's certainly something that we have an opportunity to play a part in as we go.
While
we're on the conversation of value chains and supply chains, I think what's really important to remember is sometimes we think there's a divide between northern BC and the urban BC, the 604. But what happens in the north directly fuels the economic prosperity here in the 604. And a good example of this is that about $3.7 billion of procurement comes from the mining industry every year, and about $1.4 billion of that actually comes out of the 18 communities in Metro Vancouver. So there actually really is a close integration between the industry in the north and the businesses in Vancouver and Greater Vancouver that actually supply those industries.
So we had this conversation a year ago, permit to prosperity, and we were looking at, okay, what do we need to do to move this whole process down the line so that we can start to realize some of these economic opportunities? And one of the questions that has come in and says, well, what can we do to support mineral exploration and development to generate the mines of tomorrow? And I'll use this as a way of going to a closing remark from each of you because we're going to run out of time. What do we need to do so that next year when we do this same topic, you're going to say, I've got good news? Naileen, let's come back and start with you because I know that you're tight on time here.
I would still look for ways in which we can support the works that are happening between industry, First Nations and governments. And that's really truly creating the space for us to recognize and integrate the independent and very important decision-making that contributes to project development on First Nations lands.
What would you like to, next steps here so that a year from now you're going, we've got good news? Or am I being unrealistic by projecting 1 year? Maybe it has to be more.
No, I think you can see good news in a year, but I think it goes back to the points we made about taking action, being politicians being brave, taking a risk. And you can see the survey results there. There's support for this work. And we just need to get down to it and make it happen. Simple as that.
Kim, what would you like to see happen? I know you want to see more BC mining companies employ your services.
For sure. And I guess that's a good opportunity for me to shout out the incredible innovation ecosystem that we do have in BC that supports technology like ours, sort of getting through the difficult years of R&D. Where we struggle is the valley of death of commercialization, sort of getting into operations. And so what I would love to see in BC is more collaboration. You mentioned it in the mining innovation roadmap, the idea that what Sweden does, Australia does this, Quebec even does this, where they take very specific challenges and they bring them to bear on a group of experts in the province, for example, who can come and bring a solution to that. I don't see us doing that. I think we have something to do, we have something to offer to every site, every spot along the mining value chain there if we engage as a group in a collaborative way.
Kayvon.
Yeah, I think that point around collaboration is key for us. So Newmont entered into British Columbia several years ago in a pretty significant way with the acquisition of Newcrest. That was about a $26 billion acquisition, and a sizable portion of that was here in British Columbia with the Brucejack mine and the Red Chris mine. And we've been laser focused on building a shared vision with the Tahltan Nation for the future of the Red Chris mine. We already do about $100 million of business annually with the Tahltan Nation Development Corporation. We employ 220 Tahltans at the Red Chris operation, and we're looking at the future of that mine as an underground block cave. And it's a project that we've proposed, and we're going through what's called the Section 7 Joint Decision-Making Agreement. So for us, the focus is really around that shared vision and creating shared prosperity with the nation and ensuring that there's infrastructure there that enables our industrial operations, but also supports community development and community well-being and prosperity.
Martin.
A lot of great thoughts there. I had a call earlier today with someone in the Prime Minister's office, a policy person, and if you look at the Liberal Party platform as it relates to mining and critical minerals, there's actually a lot of interesting stuff in there, and they're in the very early days now of actually having to take, one-liners or bullet points in a policy platform and turn it into tangible action. I do have some faith that they will be genuine, and that at the federal government level, you'll see a renewed interest in our sector in a way that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. And I think there's a great opportunity here for people in industry and for counterparts in government here in BC who've been thinking deeply about these challenges and have been thinking about ways to kind of practically implement streamlining and greater efficiencies in permitting to influence how the federal government is actually developing its processes around this to implement some of those platform points. And the federal government, I think, has just frankly more financial resources as well to be able to invest in these issues, which I think is something that could be of huge benefit to the province and to companies operating here in BC.
Last word to you, Michael.
Well, there's a lot at stake, and the glass is half full. And there are a lot of people working on some of the challenges. I would keep it simple, though. And I think the two main things that are kind of blocking progress in our sector are permitting and First Nations capacity. So we need to accelerate mine permitting. And I'm hopeful we're going to start to see some change over the next 6 months to a year. There's definitely the willingness provincially and federally. Second, we need to ensure, and this is related to permitting, we need to ensure that our First Nations partners have the technical governance capacity, administrative too, capacity to participate in major mine permitting. That's really key. That's important. They need to be able to do that on a level playing field. So those two things, I think we can make some headway, and I think we can get some stuff done in this province, and we need to.
Well, over the years, we have seen quite a shift in change in attitudes towards mining in BC, as was evidenced by the poll that Mario gave us those results of tonight. I feel that the tone of the conversation this year is different than the one we had last year. Last year there was frustration. This year there's hope. And I think that by continuing to talk about what are the challenges, being open to them, and addressing them with a real determination to solve them, we're going to start to see some changes. And so I leave our panel tonight hopeful about what the future can be in this sector, because as we know, the benefits economically sprinkle down through every region of the province and into every program. So I thank all of you for coming and joining me on the panel tonight. This was a great session. Naleen, you're not here, so we're going to have to send you one of the coveted Conversations Live mugs. Everybody else here on the panel gets one to take home, the one that's there for you. And then also there's your gift certificate and corkscrew from Marquee Wines. And just before we go, I want to give a little shout out to our next event, which is on May 27th, which we're calling Live Long and Prosper, How to Age Well in Canada. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Thank you for tuning into Conversations Live, an Oh Boy Productions program. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can find our previous and upcoming episodes at conversationslive.ca. You can also follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Again, thank you. I'm Stuart McNish.